Okay, let's talk about something you probably never think about, but that literally keeps our entire world moving. Lubricants. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating research paper from 2011 that tried to tackle a huge environmental problem hidden right inside our machines.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Your car's engine? Yup. The power plant generating your electricity? You bet. Even the tiniest gears inside a watch. If it's got moving parts, it needs lubrication to stop it from grinding itself into dust. It is, quite literally, the lifeblood of our modern world.
So here's the catch. The very stuff that makes all our technology possible. Well, it has a hidden dark side, an environmental cost. And for decades, the answer has been a definite yes. So a team of chemical engineers asked a pretty bold question. What if we could change the formula?
So to really get why their work was such a big deal, let's just set the stage real quick. For like 100 years, the world has run on lubricants made from crude oil. Then, in 2011, this paper came along and proposed a totally different, greener, bio-based alternative. And now? Well, that search is more urgent than ever. So let's break down what they actually found.
Okay, first things first. We have to understand the problem they were trying to solve. I mean, what's so bad about the lubricants we've been using for so long anyway? So, your standard engine oil comes from petroleum, and it's packed with these additives called SAPs. That stands for sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur. Now, these things are fantastic at protecting an engine, but they are an absolute nightmare for modern emission systems, like the catalytic converter in your car. The whole industry knew they needed to shift gears towards formulas with low or even zero SAPs.
And that brings us naturally to the proposed solution. If the old petroleum-based stuff is the problem, what's the alternative? Well, the answer was to try and engineer lubricant from a completely different and hopefully much more sustainable source.
So, say hello to the hero of our story, the bio-based lubricant. Instead of being made from crude oil, this stuff is created from renewable sources. In this particular study, they cooked up a formula using glycerol and oleic acid. It's green, it's renewable, and it's naturally free of all those nasty saps. Problem solved, right? Well, not so fast.
And here is where things get really, really interesting. You see, making a green base oil is one thing, but making it strong enough to actually protect an engine, that is a whole other ballgame. And to understand why, we've got to zoom way, way in to the microscopic level.
You know, we think of metal parts, like a piston, as being perfectly smooth. But if you could zoom in with a powerful microscope, you'd see they're not smooth at all. They look more like a mountain range, with all these jagged peaks and deep valleys. Scientists call these asperities, and the entire job of a lubricant is to fill in those valleys and keep those mountain peaks from crashing into each other.
And this chart, the Strieback curve, illustrates the challenge perfectly. Over on the right, under low pressure, you have a nice, thick film of oil keeping everything separated. But as the pressure ramps up, that's moving to the left on the chart, that oil film gets squeezed thinner and thinner and thinner. Eventually, you hit what's called boundary lubrication. And that's when those microscopic mountain peaks start to make contact. That's where things really start to wear out.
And that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? The new bio-based oil is great, but in that extreme high-pressure zone, it needs help. It needs a secret ingredient, an additive, to form a last-ditch protective shield right on the metal itself. And that is exactly what this 2011 paper is all about. The researchers basically set up a kind of scientific bake-off. They wanted to find the perfect performance-enhancing additive, one that was still environmentally friendly for their new biolube. So let's meet the contestants. You had 4 main contenders, and they're all ashless, which is key. There's one based on nitrogen, one on sulfur, and one on phosphorus. And then there's a 4th one, DMTD, which is kind of a nitrogen and sulfur combo. The researchers tested them all, by themselves and in different mixtures, to see which one would come out on top. So how do you score a competition like this? Well, they use 2 key tests. The first is wear scar diameter, or WSD. They run a machine under a set load for an hour, and then just measure the size of the mark worn into a steel ball. Simple. For this one, lower is better. The second test is the load wear index, or LWI. This is the extreme pressure test. They just keep piling on more and more weight until the machine seizes up. Here, a higher number is better. Okay, so the experiment is set, the contestants are ready, and we know how we're keeping score. Let's get to the results. Because this is where the nice, simple story of a green solution gets a whole lot more complicated. So let's look at that first test, just preventing steady, everyday wear.
The base bio oil on its own left a pretty big scar, 0.84 millimeters. But look at this. The phosphorus-based additive dibutyl phosphate was the clear winner here. It slashed that wear scar by more than half, down to just 0.34 millimeters. That's an incredible improvement.
But what about the brutal extreme pressure test? This is where the story changes. The best individual performer just wasn't enough. The real champion was a combination, a mix of that phosphorus additive and the nitrogen-sulfur one. Together, they almost doubled the lubricant strength, boosting the load wear index from about 27 all the way up to nearly 52.5.
So, there you have it. Just combine those two additives and you've got the perfect green lubricant. Simple, happy ending. But if it were that easy, we probably wouldn't be making this explainer. Turns out there was a hidden catch that the researchers discovered when they looked a little closer. This chart reveals the fundamental dilemma. That vertical line shows performance. The higher up, the better. But the horizontal line across the bottom, that shows corrosiveness, or how much the lubricant actually eats away at metal parts. And the trend is unmistakable. The additives that performed the best under pressure were also the most corrosive. Ouch.
The researchers themselves summed it up perfectly in their paper. In the original Indonesian, they wrote, "Perbaikan suatu sifat, ikuti dengan penurunan sifat lain," which translates to, an improvement in one property is followed by a decrease in another property. And that, my friends, is the classic engineering trade-off.
So, what does this all mean in the end? The experiment didn't give us a single magic formula. Instead, it reveals something much more important about the path forward for green technology. Well, it seems like the research points to 3 key lessons. First, there's no single magic bullet additive that just solves everything. Second, green engineering is a really complex balancing act. You can't just maximize one thing without affecting something else. And finally, the best solutions don't come from a single hero ingredient, but from creating a team of them that work together to maximize the good stuff and minimize the bad. You know, this 2011 study on lubricants really illustrates a question that goes way beyond just engine oil. As we innovate and try to build a more sustainable world, the real challenge isn't just inventing new things. It's having the wisdom to understand their hidden costs and mastering the really complex art of the trade-off. What are we willing to sacrifice to gain something else? That's the question we're all still trying to answer.